It's October, so if you're a writer, you know what that means. That means next month is November, and that's Nanowrimo. For those of you who aren't like deep into the writing social media world, November is National Novel Writing Month, in which you can be a part of this, I think it's worldwide, attempt at completing a novel in a month. I've done it several times and really enjoy it. So I'm going to do it this year. And then because of that, a lot of people call October Prep-tober, the month to get ready to make sure you're successful. So instead of this being just a video about how to get ready for Nanowrimo or Nanowrimo, however you want to say it, this is going to be a video about how I prepare to write a novel. And I do think I'm pretty good at getting my words on a page quickly. So first let's talk about what kind of writer I was before I was a planner, because there's planners and pantsers. Planners are people that plan out their novel. Pantsers are people that just are like, I'm just going to write. And for a long time, I was in the camp of I'm just going to write. And it went really poorly for me. That doesn't mean it'll go poorly for you, but it's just not how I write. I would open a Word document or whatever, and I'd have maybe a character name, maybe a setting, and maybe like a weird scene I had thought of that's going to happen like 2/3 through the book, and I just start writing. And so because of this, I had piles and piles and piles of unfinished novels that just had, under 20 pages written. And that's not how you become a published writer. So I switched to being a planner, and it has changed my life and my ability to finish writing. I very rarely now start a book that I don't finish writing. I might not publish it or try to publish it or whatever, but I at least finish it. So this is all going to be about how to finish the novel you start. We're going to start with a disclaimer. None of the first drafts I've written during Nanowrimo are good. None of them. Not one. One of them I have a publishing contract deal for 2024. So that's good, but it did have to go through several revisions. But the first draft was written during Nanowrimo, which is very exciting. Some of them I have self-published, like as an indie author. When I was writing under Lucy Hudson, the book Waiting for You was a Nanowrimo book, and so was part of Only You, because those were too short to be a Nanowrimo book. So you can get a lot of good work done. You're not going to get a perfect novel. I don't think anyone could. Maybe. I don't know. I doubt it. Sort of the thing about when you write during Nanowrimo is that you do write sort of furiously. And when you're writing furiously, you're not always going to get like the perfect sentence or the perfect word or any of those things. So that's my disclaimer. Now let's get into my suggestions. So this list is what works for me. You don't have to do all of it. If you want to do some of it, you can. If you want to do one thing, you can. If you want to do all of it, go crazy. Let's start. The first recommendation I have is to make a book Bible. And this can look wildly different depending on what story you're working on. So anytime I create a world, because I do now write mainly paranormal or fantasy, I do have to create a world. I make a book Bible that tells me all about the world. What are the rules in the world? What are the magic systems? What are the creatures? Stuff like that. I also put in here all my character names. So before I start writing, I come up with all my character names. And then I usually, and I'm always so happy when I do this, come up with a list of random character names when you need to name a minor character who you just give a throwaway line to. That's going to be in any type of story. You're in a contemporary, it's a throwaway line to the person working at the restaurant you're in. You're in fantasy, it's the innkeeper, whoever, who you have to talk to for like 5 minutes to get directions to go where you're going to next. It's someone on some spaceship. You need a list of names that's going to make it so much easier for you. Put that in your book Bible. I would do the same thing with settings also. Come up with a couple different setting names. This is more so if you work in like the fantasy or historical realm. If you're working in contemporary, then just, let's say you're setting it in a neighborhood in hopefully a city you're familiar with, because it's really hard to write in cities you're not familiar with. And you write down a couple of the restaurants that exist there. If you want this book rooted in reality, write down the main streets so you know like where you are. That's very helpful. Here's where I also do all my character descriptions, what they look like, because I think that's way easier, especially when you write romance. You don't want to be like, what color are their eyes again? What color is their hair? How tall are they? I put all that stuff in there. My second recommendation for Nano, and always, is to give yourself the gift of an outline. And I'll explain why that's actually a gift. So you don't have to use a specific outline. I really like Save the Cat and Romancing the Beat, which are great books, and they have great outlines in them on how to get your story structure. But I don't think you have to go that far. I think if you give yourself the gift of just like a general outline, a chapter outline, You could say what you want to get done in each chapter. Also, doesn't have to be that specific. This is the order of events. I don't want to forget to put this in here. This is going to help. If you are writing whatever and you want there to be a fall fest, don't forget to put them in the fall fest because then you're at the end of the book and like, oh no, it's November. There aren't a lot of fall fests in November. So give yourself that gift of just like general action outline, how things are going to go, what order, so that when you're writing, it helps a lot. I would say the deeper the outline, the more help it is. If you give yourself a chapter outline, which I do sometimes, I don't always, then when you're stuck in Nano and staring at your screen and at your cursor blinking, you can look at that outline and say, okay, this is what needs to happen in this chapter. I'm going to do it now. The third thing is kind of anti-planner, but allow yourself to go on like little side quests. If all of a sudden you're writing and you get this idea, like there's this minor character who's an innkeeper who all of a sudden you're like, maybe this person can actually give more to the stories. Let yourself do that. During Nano, I'll do things like write out whole scenes and then highlight them. Like, I don't know if I'm going to keep this or not. And then sometimes I'll write a different scene that would take the place of it right after, just because I'll change my mind about something that happened. Oh, I actually don't want them to go that way, but I already wrote 1,000 words about it and it's Nano. I'm not deleting those 1,000 words. So I'll keep them in the document, highlight them, and then write my next scene the way I want it. It makes it a little more fun also because like writing is supposed to be fun. It is frustrating and stressful and a lot of things, but it should also be enjoyable. So let yourself write what you want to write in the moment sometimes. It's not a big deal. Just let yourself do it. This is probably my best piece of advice, number 4, and it's allow yourself to write things like finish this later in all caps, or write transition later, or I hate this scene. I will deal with it later and jump to the next scene. Don't feel like you have to finish this first draft in a way that will make coherent sense to a reader. It only needs to make sense to you so that when you go over it for your second draft, you understand what you were trying to do. I cannot tell you how many times as a romance author, I will write, the first 75% of a sex scene during Nano and then just write, finish this while drafting 2, because sometimes you just can't get your brain around where anything's going to go next. You don't have to drive yourself crazy. The clock is ticking. Move on. And my last piece of advice is just that if you don't finish, it's fine. It's a hard month. I don't know if anyone's really thought about that. November's a hard month to write 50,000 words in. And I don't think it's just an American thing, though the fact that Thanksgiving is in November makes it very difficult because a lot of us have to travel to see family or we're cooking large meals and you kill a day or two that you can't get any words in. And when you're trying to write 50K, you really do need to write every single day. But also, even if you're not American, the holidays are approaching. It's getting cold out, so if you have children, they're always inside. You're maybe not, feeling the best when it comes to like seasonal effectiveness. It's a difficult month to write in. So if you don't finish, it's not a big deal. Also, I would say usually when I write a novel, when I do all these things, non-Nano, I will write more than 50,000 words. Usually my first draft novels are usually closer to 65. I always give myself 2 months to write a first draft. Just remember that even if you don't hit 50K, even if you don't hit 30K or 20K or even 10, you got some words down, and that's what's most important. You can always finish your novel later. I'd say there's probably very few people in the world who finish a novel during Nanowrimo and are like, this is perfect. I have to do one quick draft and now it's ready for publication, because that's just not how it is. One of my favorite authors, Juliette Merlier, did talk on her blog once about Nanowrimo because people were asking her if she did it. And she said no, because that's not how she writes, which then she talked about how she writes, which was really interesting because she writes all day and then the next morning she starts her day by editing what she wrote and then writes more, which is not how I write at all. I write like a first draft, edit the whole thing. First draft, edit the whole thing. And so everybody writes differently. There's all these different ways you can actually get your writing done. And you don't have to try to jam it into Nanowrimo. But if you want to try, I hope these tips that I gave you today were helpful and that you can get some words on the page this November. I will be doing Nanowrimo. If you're on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter, and I tweet a lot about it. I'm sure I'll make a video or 2 during November about how I'm doing on my word count, and hopefully it's good. But follow along if you want to, and tell me about your Nano journey and all your writing journeys as well. If you've stuck around this long, thank you so much for hanging out. Drop me a pen emoji because we're all writers. And as always, I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. See you soon.